There we go.
Here we go. We're on. So we're here tonight. My name's Mick Hughes, and I'm founder of the ACL Hub, and I've got the absolute. I'm grateful. I'm
Mhm.
blown away. I'm excited. I'm all the things you should be feeling when you get to actually get inside the mind of an ACL injured professional athlete. And tonight I've got the joy of presenting and talking to Andrew. Now I hear it's Nabbout, not Naboo. Is that
Nabbout. Nab
Nabboot? I
Nab
had
Nabbout with a
to
T, yeah.
with the T. I had a chat to Simon, who you often do a podcast with. I've seen you doing a podcast with lately from Gogglebox, and he gave
Oh,
me
yep.
he gave me a heads up to say it's not Naboo, it's Nabboot.
Oh, he's
So
yeah, Nabbout. Yeah, Nabbout. With a T. With a T.
Oh, Andrew,
Yeah.
I appreciate you coming along, mate. Thanks very much
Oh, my
for
pleasure.
spending some time. Those of you guys who are maybe a bit unfamiliar, because we do have some listeners from all over the world and some students. So those of you that aren't familiar with Andrew, I can hopefully get your CV right, but feel free to correct me if I'm wrong. But doing a little bit of background research on Andrew, he's played in the Australian A-League here since 2013, 2014. Melbourne Victory was your first club, and you've had a couple of stints there. Had some time at Newcastle Jets. I had a bit of
I
time there
did.
at the Newcastle Jets as well, in the under 20s, looking after the under 20s Newcastle
Oh,
Jets
good.
a while ago. So we might have crossed paths in the dens back at
Possibly.
the university. Uh,
Yep.
and then you had a bit of time overseas as well, I see in Japan, and then
Yep.
you made your way back to Melbourne, Victory, and then now currently at Melbourne City. And you
Melbourne
played for
City. Yep.
Australia and
I did.
he's got 10 caps for Australia as well. So he's highly credentialed, and
Hmm.
he's not a bad footballer too, by all accounts. Got all that right?
Thank you. Yeah, yep. For the most part. Yeah, for the most part, it was all right. Yeah, spent a little bit of time overseas. Played in Malaysia for a year. Came back to Newcastle, sort of reinvented myself, if you like, and got my move to Japan, which was amazing, real eye opener. And then just before the birth of my son, we decided to come back home and been in Melbourne ever since.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's been a pretty long career so far, which has been
Mm,
great.
good. You're
Unfortunately,
barely a day over 21 though, right? That's
yeah, yeah, that's what I keep telling myself. But yeah, I mean, I've had my fair share of injuries, unfortunately. But it's been a pretty rewarding career so far. So,
yeah.
yeah, pretty grateful.
Yep. Well, we'll talk definitely tonight's obviously chat's going to be largely ACL focused, but I think
Yeah.
hearing a little bit of that, like we never want to sort of dwell on injuries, and having dealt with some athletes in the past, that's the last thing I want to talk about here,
Mm.
injuries, like, you're dealing with people on the day in and day out of working in sport, and, they've got a sore knee, for example, and it's like, how's your knee feeling? It's like, well, let's talk about something other than my knee or my sore shoulder or my sore back.
Yep.
It's, trying not to talk about it. But obviously tonight's chat, we sort of want to get a little bit more of a player perspective, an athlete perspective. So yeah, grateful for your insights here. But yeah, if you're happy and willing to share, like, can you take us back
Absolutely.
to round three of this season when you injured your ACL, and you just scored a winner, the one and only goal for the game in that round three clash against Western United, and you'd only just scored it 10 minutes prior to your injury. Can you
Yeah.
sort of take us through that moment? What happened? What was the injury mechanism, and all those initial thoughts and feelings that were going on in your head?
Yeah. Obviously it was pretty violent the way it happened. I literally scored a goal a minute earlier, which as a professional athlete, especially a footballer, when you score a goal, you more often than not get a sudden sort of burst of
Mm,
energy and excitement and adrenaline. And I did an action that I've done thousands of times in my career before.
yeah.
Went to press the fullback, and he sort of changed direction, and I was running at full pace, planted my foot to change direction. Studs got caught in the turf, and my knee kept going, um, unfortunately, and
Yeah.
just felt like my knee just ripped in half.
Yeah.
Um, initially I thought that I dislocated my knee because obviously I'd never felt what an ACL was like. So I was like, everything popped. It felt like something dislocated, and then physios came on the pitch to help me up, and my knee just went, or my leg just went sort of limp. I
Yep.
couldn't lift it. I couldn't move it. Everything just deactivated. My quads wouldn't turn on. And eventually I sort of got feeling back and got up and hobbled off. And I knew straight away that I'd done my ACL because, of everything you hear of the sound and the feeling and the mechanism. And yeah, I just sort of knew straight away. The doctors checked me on the pitch and they were like, yeah, it's not good. So
Yep.
that was sort of, it's crazy because I was just riding a high and I'd scored 2 games in a row, and coming off the back of, a lot of rehab in the last few years, it was felt like I was getting back to my best, and then
Yep.
it all came crashing down.
Then this happens. And so you said
Yeah.
this is this is your first time experiencing one. You never had an injury like this or a near miss as a junior,
No,
or yeah.
no,
Is there a family history? Do you have any immediate family members that have had
no,
this injury?
I'm the first one, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm the first one. Knock on wood, I never really had knee problems before.
Yep.
Never had. I've had sort of like a split in my quad tendon, where it attaches to the patella
Yep.
for a few years, but it's never really, like, it gave me trouble for a couple of weeks, and then sort of did some rehab, strengthen the quad, and it sort of went away. But never really had any knee mechanics injuries, and
Yep.
this is the first one.
Yeah, and so being like a significant injury, certainly different from like a soft tissue,
Yeah.
run of niggles around the quad, or a lot of footballers will have hamstring injuries from time to time, a calf. I also understand like you had some significant Achilles problems the year before. Was that a rupture, or was it a tendonitis, or what was the kind of problem there?
Um, I had Haglund's deformity in both sides.
Right. Yep.
Um, and it was like right on the insertion. It was digging into my tendon, and
Yep.
for about a couple of years, I was sort of playing through the pain, and it was just wearing away at my tendon, and ended up splitting the tendon down the middle and sort of shearing off. I'd say about 60 to 70% of the tendon. It was pretty
Wow.
Like, it was pretty bad,
Yeah.
and so I went and saw the surgeon, just because rehab wasn't working, and then he just sort of went through the split, shaved the bone, and
Yep.
stitched up my tendon. Um, Gave me a 6 to 9 month rehab timeline,
Yep.
and I got back in 4.
Yeah. Wow. Awesome.
And then my left one flared up. Obviously, I think all the compensation and whatever
Yeah.
just got to it, and yeah, played about 10 or 11 games, and then left one left one progressed pretty quickly. To be honest, I was able
Yep.
to play through the right one for a few years, but left one just progressed
Yeah.
way too quickly, and then ended up having to have the identical surgery on the left side.
Yeah. So
Yeah,
that's a fairly disrupted previous year,
yeah,
sounds like. And we're kind of starting to, not that we're trying to pin the blame on anything in particular, but we definitely are getting a better understanding of ACL injuries now. I'm not sure if it's been
mhm,
mentioned, or, how everyone's kind of, I guess, reason and rationalize why now. Like you said before,
mm,
you've done this, you've pressed on a defender thousands and thousands of times, and that one time on that night in round three, your knee goes pop. Like, why now
yeah,
after all these years? And there's certainly some links to that inconsistency in training. Like, we saw a bucket load of it during COVID and the post-COVID era, where that inconsistent training and games and all that kind of stuff, and significant times away from that regularity and consistency, and then all of a sudden effectively a reload that happens really rather quickly in the whole scheme of things, is enough to sort of be a contributing factor there. We saw
yeah,
it years ago in the NFL when we saw huge spike in Achilles ruptures after there was like a big player contractual disagreement between the NFL and the players, where there was like a big shutout, and so no clubs had access to the players, and all of a sudden when access opened up, training just ramped up exponentially, and all these players were just rupturing their Achilles like they're going out of fashion. So
Yeah,
yeah, and I see that now. I see, these older 35, 40, 45-year-old males and females, dads, mums and dads, who are returning back to netball, returning back to soccer, returning back to basketball after having families for 10 years, and all of a sudden now they're hurting their knees too. So
yeah,
there's certainly some links there, but we can never 100% hang our hat on as to why. And
no.
ultimately when it happens, it's like, well, okay, it's happened. Now we've just got to, deal with it and move on, and
Yeah,
let's do what we can. So what was the kind of timeline between, you had your injury, the docs were testing your knee, you'd sort of obviously come to, the understanding that your ACL had been injured. What's the process for you then? I know it's very different in our general population world, but can you give us some insight as to how it played out for you as a professional athlete?
yeah. So obviously, I waited a couple of days after I tore it just because it was pretty swollen, and a scan probably wouldn't have told us much. So I waited a couple of days before I had the scan, but it was just to sort of prove what we already know,
Yeah.
but more to see what other damage I had done.
Yep.
Obviously, meniscal injuries, and I was getting really bad pain in my MCL as well, so I figured I'd done some damage to that. And so, initially after I got the scan, I booked in an appointment with the surgeon,
Yep.
and sort of went in, spoke to him, and then one of a physio that I used to work with, he's now at the Demons in the AFL, just called me and said, go see Julian Fella,
Yep.
and went and saw him, and honestly, best thing I ever did,
Yep.
because he was amazing. Uh, Honestly, he's the way he speaks to you, how comforting he is. It's like speaking to one of the doctors or the physios at training. Just feel
Yeah.
really comfortable. Sometimes when you go and see surgeons, it's a little bit intimidating, and
Hmm.
you blank out on questions and you don't know what to say. But he
Yeah.
was like super calming, really, really good to work with, really good to talk to, and I left there feeling really, really comfortable. And he gave me another week
Yep.
to let my knee settle down, just because he didn't want to do surgery while it was still a
Yep.
bit swollen. And yeah, we did surgery, and here we are.
Yep. Yeah, you're right. I've been lucky enough to talk with Julian many a times, and he's spoken and taught for my other platform,
Hmm.
Learn.physio, and we've had him on board to teach us everything about ACL surgery, and yeah, he's absolutely a wonderful man, and
Yeah,
definitely one of the world's best surgeons, and certainly one of the better ones. And I always think that if I ever was in an unfortunate position to tear my ACL, Julian's the man that I'm going first to.
absolutely.
So yeah, he's a great communicator, and that's important. That's the important part. As you said, historically some surgeons have got some pretty gruff personalities, and some
Yeah,
very interesting ways they talk to you. So yeah, to have someone speak to you at a good level where you can understand what's going on, but also do in a respectful way. And often, it may not have been an option for you doing rehabilitation or non-operative management, but I know that Julian, in fact, is also too, happy to consider, non-operative management. But in the elite setting where time is paramount and the decision to get back to sport often outweighs that desire to roll the dice and try rehab. Um,
yeah.
Julian's definitely the person I'd be going to see. Was that ever a discussion point for you guys to just see there's a famous case of an English Premier League football player who returned after ACL rupture back in 2014. After nine weeks, he ruptured his ACL and he was back playing EPL level football again without an ACL.
Wow.
Was that ever thrown
No,
out there?
absolutely not. Absolutely
Yeah.
not. We're funny enough. We've actually got um, one of our women's players has had three ACLs, and now she's playing without one,
Yep.
um, and done really well.
He's doing okay. Yep.
Yeah, but for me, it was just it was never an option.
Yeah.
Just purely the type of player I am. I just think it's just way too risky. And
Yep.
personally, I think if I did that, I'd probably end up in the same position. Just given how violent, the movements I make, and
Yep.
everything's pretty explosive and powerful. So I think it was just get in your head that you're doing surgery and it's going to be a 9 to 12 month injury, and
Yep.
just crack on with the rehab. So I accepted it the minute that it happened, that it was done. And luckily, I'm old enough now that my mind's in a pretty good place, even though it's you know going through this experience. It's still really tough.
Yes.
At times you do go into a hole, and you come out of it eventually. And but being an older guy and having a few injuries, I sort of embrace the challenges ahead with rehab, and
Yep.
I don't see it as a failure as much as I do a challenge.
Yep.
So it sort of helps to have that sort of mentality, and um, yeah, it's definitely helped me a lot. But yeah, like I said, with ACL rehab, it's a bit different. You do go into a little bit of a hole, and there's
Hmm.
absolutely no chance that you can fast track anything just because you're putting yourself at risk. So it's
Yeah, you're right.
tough.
It is one of those injuries that it does humble you quite a bit in that, like you said before with your Achilles, you're offered, you're told it's going to be a 6 to 9 month kind of rehab process or even longer. And, you're back playing after 4 months. And, some of the soft tissue injuries, you train the house down and, you look
Mhm.
after your body, you do a lot of that really important stuff to help you. So yeah, eat well. You do every little 1%er to get back, and you can shave off a few days and a few weeks with the soft tissue injuries. But the ACL, it's kind of like a hard stop. As
Yeah,
much as we make it criteria driven, and we want you to pass this test before we go through different phases, ultimately we do have to respect some defined time points for the surgical processes and just to restore the strength and power and to get the things back in your system that make you a great footballer. Unfortunately does take time due to the significant injury you had. So it is one of those ones you can shave off a little bit of time here and there, but it's not months and months like some of the other ones are.
no,
You
unfortunately.
what are the things, I guess, just going a bit into it, what you were saying before, what are the things that you kind of, yeah, I guess miss the most being in rehab now, and yeah, sort of finding yourself in these kind of dark holes that you sort of talk about. Yeah, what are those kind of things that you're missing, and what are those sort of feelings about the injury and the rehab process? Can you give us a bit of insight?
Yeah. So at the moment, what I'm sort of going through is, because, like we spoke about, I'm such normally an aggressive rehabber,
Yeah,
and I sort of make it back in sometimes half the time that they give me to rehab. Um, I sort of get into these positions where I feel like I'm a lot further ahead
yeah,
of where I actually am. So I'm on the field running at the moment. I'm pretty
awesome.
much sprinting again. I'm I'm doing ball work, skills drills, and everything. And then I look over at the team and I'm like, well, I think I can do that. But realistically, I'm miles off it, And when that reality sets in, it puts
Yeah,
you in a bit of a hole, because you're like, I've still got so long to be able to go in and
yeah,
have contact, and make those sharp, explosive turns and changes of direction and whatever. Again, at the moment, everything in rehab's controlled.
yeah,
It's in a controlled environment. They set the speed that I should be going at, and but
yeah.
in a game, you can't control that. So
Yes.
that's where I get humbled.
Yeah,
Just because no matter how close you feel, you're still so far.
yeah,
So that's sort of the holes that I go in a little bit and
yeah,
get out of them, just by reminding myself that you're still probably further ahead of where you should be, but your graft hasn't matured, and
yeah.
you've still got time, and don't risk it because you don't want to do it again.
Yes, yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Have you had many little rocky moments throughout the first, because you're currently 5 months post-op now, and I kind of find most people are generally pretty smooth sailing. It's obviously a bit painful and a bit sort of rocky in the first 6 weeks, and then they kind of come out of it, and then they kind of get a bit rocky again in about 3 months when they start to run and jump again. Have you had any kind of major little setbacks like that along the way, or has it been a pretty good smooth ride to now?
No, I've actually had a couple of setbacks, to be
Mm,
completely honest. Unfortunately, I've because I had a quad graft,
Yep.
and I had elite as well. So
Yep.
that obviously made things a little bit slower and stiffer and more painful in the first little period. And then I was in the gym, obviously back running, and in the gym I was doing some prep work and was doing some plyometric work just to get ready, and hyperextended my knee.
Yep.
And that was pretty painful and pretty scary because I thought I'd done something else
Yep.
again. Went out on the field, didn't feel good. Started running, didn't feel good. Immediately, my knee just stiffened up all
Yep.
through the back. So took a couple of days to let it settle down, and then cracked on again once it was all settled. And um, I've still got some weirdly. I've got sort of distal hamstring tendon, like a medial hamstring tendon pain that just hasn't gone away since surgery.
Yeah. Okay. Yep.
Haven't been able to load it completely, in a sort of flexing. So any
Yep.
hammy curls, Nordics, haven't been able to do until recently.
Yep.
And even now it's heavily sort of restricted. I'm sort of doing assisted Nordics and
Yep.
um, blood flow restricted hamstring curls just to sort of get some load in.
Yep.
Um, so yeah, it's been a bit tough, but on the
Yep.
other hand, my strength is almost better than it was before ACL in terms of my quad strength.
Yep.
So yeah, it's just a couple of highs and a couple of lows,
Yeah,
but
and
I
and
guess that's
have
the
you tried to find those silver linings as much as you can? Obviously, when you have an injury like this, and you can go into some pretty dark places, and you get pulled away from the main playing group. And what are some of the silver linings you have sort of caught along the way?
um the silver lining that I had mainly was that I just accepted that I was going to miss the rest of this season.
Yep.
But timing wise, it meant that I'd be ready for day one of preseason.
Yep.
So I sort of said to myself, all right, well, you're going to miss the rest of this season, but at least you'll be ready for next season. You
Yep.
won't miss any of that. So that was sort of a silver lining in terms of timing, which the
Yep.
timing isn't great at any
It's
time, but
it's never a great time, but
no, it's never
you're
a
right.
great time.
You're right. That is it's always it's a really good positive mindset there, that if you can sort of think about, okay, well, yep, it's crap, this season's done, but all right, I'm gonna be ready day one preseason. I'm gonna train the house down and prove
Yeah,
to everyone that I'm back and I'm better than ever.
yeah,
That's good.
yeah, and obviously, having regained a lot of my strength back in my quad, which was heavily impacted, obviously with a quad graft. I lost 50-60% of my quad overnight,
Yep.
which was the hardest thing to take, to be honest, because I looked down the day after surgery and my quad was half the size that it was before, which
Yeah,
is
yeah.
insane.
It's scary, huh?
Yeah, it was so scary.
Yeah.
But I regained it back. I did a leg press test a couple of weeks ago, and my 3 rep max was 240 kilos, which for single leg is pretty good, and
It's
it was
awesome.
almost at the same level as the other side.
Yep.
So it's good in areas, and obviously my hamstring's still got a little bit of a deficit just because I haven't been able to load it for a long time. But
Yep.
it's getting back. It's getting back to where it should be, and that's what's sort of holding me back in terms of high speed running. Um,
Yep.
just not being able to load my hammy and get it to where it's going to withstand running 33, 34 k's an hour.
Yeah, and that's the reality, is that's the we often see the ACL injured athlete, it's the series of soft tissue injuries in the next season that often plagues them. So
Mm,
that's probably part of that kind of load management and the kind of management that you're under at the moment, that yes, you can kick a footy and you can pass and be an athlete and be back on the field, but those repeated sprint demands and that speed and just the physical conditioning to play game after game,
yeah,
it's going to take some time to evolve. So we aren't, and you aren't breaking down, with niggling soft tissue. So we just want to make sure you're obviously bulletproof, and preseason training will do that. That'll be a great opportunity to sort of get a lot of that stuff back. So,
yeah.
yeah, no, that's good. And did you, being obviously in being away, like often athletes talk about, when when they're uninjured and they're part of the main group and all of a sudden they're away from that. Like, did you feel any disconnect at any stage? Like when you go from being in the main playing group and not have to worry about do rehab or go spend too much time with the physio, and all of a sudden now your life, turns into the rehab room, and you're now best mates with the physios and the sports doc and the orthos, and was there a group of you at the time? They're in, like was another couple of long-term injured athletes, or were you kind of even in isolation a bit yourself? Take us through those kind of early, few weeks.
Yeah, so fortunately and unfortunately, I've spent a lot of time with the physios over the last, couple of years. So
Yep.
um, it's actually, to be completely honest with you, has shaped sort of what I want to do after football, which is,
Yep.
we'll get onto that later.
Yep.
But having spent time with them so much over the last 12 months, it's crazy to think, but I sort of almost felt right back at home in rehab,
Yeah.
which is bad to say, but
Yep.
I just spent so much time with them last season that it just felt like, business as usual,
Yep.
unfortunately. So, but they're honestly amazing to work with. They've helped me out, massively. But there is another young kid in rehab with us at the moment. He did his ACL about 2 months before me.
Yep.
17 years old. Um, so he's sort of, at first I thought, oh, right, it's my responsibility to sort of help this kid get through. But his attitude is top notch for a 17-year-old, and he's, physically unreal, and he's gone really, really well. So he's sort of pushing me.
Yeah.
It was
Yeah.
supposed to be the other
Awesome.
way around.
Yeah.
But yeah, he's doing really well. He sort of kept me on my toes and kept me pushing in the right direction. And just seeing sort of what he's been able to do at that age, because it's not easy to tear your ACL at any point, but
Yep.
to do it at 17 when your career is just starting is, always hard.
Yep.
But yeah, I guess that's been sort of the thing that's kept me holding on a little bit. Obviously, seeing the team train every day and seeing the team play every weekend, which is the hardest part. Sitting in the
Yep.
stands watching is, excruciating.
Yep.
It's really tough to watch. So I guess I've, you know, just take it day by day, because,
Yep.
sometimes in ACL rehab you can look too far ahead and see all the negatives, and just try and remind myself that there's a lot of positives. I'm
Yep.
still able to run. I'm still able to do everything, and um, hopefully get back from this and not be back in rehab anymore
Yep.
towards the end of my
That's
career. So
that's it. You're going to be the LeBron James of the A League, mate. You're going to be
absolutely.
playing well into your late 30s. Um, Diving a little bit deeper into that that support that you get, I think that's probably a good lesson here for us physios. If you can let us know some positives as to, it sounds like you got a great relationship with your physios and your medical team. Like, what are the kind of, I guess, attributes or qualities that they have that, I guess, make them good at their job? Like, is there communication style? Is there empathy? Like, what are the things that kind of make you feel comfortable and feel like you're at home, so to speak, unfortunately?
Yeah. No, they're all of the above, to be honest. Their communication's really, really good. They'll sit down with me at the start of every week, and explain to me, my sort of sessions for the week. And then every day just go back through it and say, you're doing this for this reason, you're doing this for that reason. Um, and honestly, because I've done it for so long now,
Yeah.
there's sort of things that I speak to my physios about that I sort of am like, okay, well, can we do something different today? Is there another sort of, instead of doing, 6 400s to get fit, can we do another set of conditioning running, to be able to just vary things up a little bit? And
Yep.
they're really good. They sort of let me have my say in rehab as well.
Awesome.
Obviously, I know how important all the steps are, and we can't cut any corners, but it's good to have a little bit of variety in rehab, just considering this one's going to be so long. So they're always
Yeah.
real flexible and easy to work with. And yeah, they're just a great bunch of guys to work with. And they've just made this so easy and comfortable, and enjoyable for how enjoyable a rehab can possibly be.
Yeah, that's a really interesting point, and a great point is that I think, and a good teaching point for any, for us physios listening, is that it's important to understand what your patient and the athlete enjoys doing. Like, because there's a whole lot of shit exercises out there that we prescribe all the time, and
Yep.
some people just fall into a routine and a rhythm of, and I'm guilty of it all the time, saying, all right, we're gonna do squats today, or we're gonna Bulgarian, and
Mhm.
you can just sort of, you can see the eyes rolling in the back of the head. It's like, not again. It's like, yeah,
Yeah.
but to listen and to hear what they like and to mix it up, and still ultimately it's providing a stimulus, how whatever stimulus that is. If we want to get stronger and longer muscles, then we know that's an eccentric contraction, so figure out a
Yep.
different way to develop that eccentric loading. Or if you want to develop power, there's about 20 different power exercises we can do to develop those qualities. So I think that's certainly, from a physio perspective, that's something we probably just need to get better at, and be more flexible, and probably less prescriptive, and less recipe following, I guess, is probably a big lesson.
Yeah.
So that's good to hear. There's some good, you've got your own sort of strong voice there and your own input to guide, and that's going to keep you engaged. It's going to keep you rocking up week after week, session after session, and keep you adhering to the plan.
Yeah. Of
If
course.
there's disconnect there and you don't get along, there's losses of trust, there's losses of communication, everything gets stale and stagnant, and then your rehab quality dips off, you go missing, and all of a sudden everything's going the wrong way.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And honestly, they've so in the gym for the most part, my sessions are um they vary from week to week, but for the most part, the core exercises are the
Yep.
same. So on certain days I'll squat, on certain days I'll power clean, on certain days I'll snatch.
Yep.
Um, you know, I prefer to have those exercises in purely because of how important I know they are.
Yep.
And even if they become a little bit, repetitive and whatever, I'm sort of able to push through that in the gym just because I value strength and power so much that I'll take it any day of the week.
Yep.
So I'll do whatever they tell me to do in there. But when it just comes to conditioning, running, and all those sorts of things, I just think, yeah, there's sort of endless possibilities as to what you can do, and there's a million ways to get fit.
Yep.
There's a million ways to get fast, and you know, it's just about finding what your athlete's comfortable with, I guess. And
Yep. And what they
um,
enjoy doing, like,
exactly, yeah,
yeah.
exactly. I don't enjoy doing 1Kers.
No.
That's a pretty big thing at Melbourne City. We do a lot of sort of 1 kilometer efforts.
Yep.
I hate it. The
Yeah.
physios have known that.
Yeah.
I'm not a long distance runner. I'm a more,
Yeah.
fast twitch fiber
Yeah. Yeah.
sort of
Just
athlete.
give
And
me 40s and 60s.
that's it. Well,
Yeah.
and they'll give me, a shitload of them and a
Yeah.
shitload of 200s and,
Yep.
MAS runs and stuff like that. And as shit as it is, I enjoy doing it more than more than 1Kers. So
Yeah.
we've sort of found a happy medium.
Yeah, yeah, that sounds a bit more AFL like, with the their poisons, the 2K time trial or the 3K
Yeah.
time trial. It's like, oh yeah, I couldn't think of anything.
Yeah. No.
Um, what about some of the things we don't do well? It doesn't sound like, the physio team and medical team are doing terrible things with you there, but in your years as a professional footballer, you probably would have had some great ones and some poor ones. What is probably some of being on the trying to get a perspective of patients and some of the things that we do poorly? What are
Hmm.
the, and we may not, and certainly doesn't sound like we'll be talking about your current crew of support, but
No, they're
and
pretty good.
don't name names. But yeah, are there things and qualities that have been unhelpful to your rehab in the past, and what things do we do bad as a physio?
um, well, not in terms of sort of ACL injuries. I know this is very much focused towards ACLs, but
Mm.
um, with sort of soft tissues, I've had a lot of them. I'm obviously one of those guys that I can recover pretty quickly,
Yep.
and a lot of the time I've had physios that will sort of treat me and give me a schedule according to a timeline and not
Yep.
how I present clinically.
Yep.
A lot of the time I recover a lot quicker. I'm able to regain strength and power and stuff really quickly, and I sort of get held back for no reason.
Yep.
If a grade 2 hamstring was whatever, a 10-week injury,
Yep.
and I'm able to play in 7 and I've passed all the markers.
Yep.
I personally, I'm not a physio, but
Yep.
I understand a lot about my body.
Yep.
And I feel like, sometimes we focus so much on timelines and
Yep.
rather than how they clinically present, and
Yep.
sometimes it's opposite, at 10 weeks, if a player's not ready to play, they're
Yep.
not ready to play,
Yeah,
just,
exactly
you
right.
don't throw them out there just because it's 10 weeks.
Yep.
So I feel like I've had a couple of physios who have held me back in that regard. And also just, physios sometimes just not being able to say, I'm not sure,
Yep. Yes.
like,
Yep.
for me, the three most powerful words in the English
Yeah.
language is, I don't know.
Yeah.
And if you're able to admit that, you get so much more trust and respect out of the player rather than giving them an answer for the
Yep.
sake of giving them an answer.
Yep.
And I think that's something that's really important. You gain so much more trust and respect out of a player if you're just able to admit that, I'm not sure, I'll get back to you.
Yes.
So I think that sort of level of communication is extremely important, especially with someone who's out for a long time.
Yep. Yeah, that's wonderful, wonderful insight there, Andrew. I appreciate that. Thank you. It's definitely yeah, really good teaching points there. Is yeah, the amount of times where I've said, oh look, yeah, 'cause you'll often get thrown curly questions by patients as well. Like, even just the other day, someone's asked me about peptides. I was like, I haven't heard about peptides since the Essendon Bombers scandal. So, I haven't even bloody read about these for years. Um, I don't think they're okay, but let me find out for you and I'll get back to you. And it's like,
Yeah,
I've got no problem in saying that, and neither should anyone. If they don't know the answer, just say, look,
yeah,
I can't comment right now. I don't know what the answer is. Let me sort of go off and do my thing, and I'll get back to you. There's
yeah,
nothing wrong with that at all, and I think that's a really important teaching point. So it's good to see that you hold that in high regard.
yeah. And I mean, I've been lucky enough throughout my career that, most of the physios that I've had, if not all of them, have been extremely good. I've actually been pretty lucky in that regard. So I can go back to each club that I've been at, and the physios have been really, really good.
Yep.
Um, and a lot of them I still keep in contact with, to be honest, when I need advice or something. So that just shows the level of trust and sort of respect that I've had for the guys that I've worked with, that I'm able to, touch base with them years
Yeah.
after working with them. And, I sort of developed a little bit of a physio network that I
That's
lean
good.
on every now and then.
It's good. It's good. And it's good to get different perspectives. Your some physios are more experienced in other types of injuries, and have got different levels of expertise, or like you get a feel for who's good at what and what they can help me with, and may have that extra little bit of knowledge there that this person doesn't. And it's no disrespect to the current person you're seeing. I just want the best for myself, and ultimately
Yeah.
that's and a good physio will completely understand that as well. Like there's many times where I'm like, I actually am not the best person to be speaking to about this condition. I'm going to pass you off to
Hmm.
someone else. But
Yeah.
yeah, it's being humble in knowing what you know, and being comfortable in knowing that you don't know everything, which is absolutely fine.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah. So take us through, at the moment, you're month 5. What does your current sort of week look like? Are you gymming 3 days a week, on field 3 days a week? Skills, what's yeah, give us up at 5 a.m. doing your cold plunges and drinking
No,
your
not
sparkling
quite.
water and tape over your nose and mouth.
Not quite that, not quite that heavy. So I'm up at sort of 6 a.m. every morning. I live about 45 minutes from the training ground, so I get to training pretty early. Um, on days where, so at the moment, my schedule is on a normal week. Monday, I'll run. So I'll
Yep.
have a field session where I do running mechanics, change of direction, speed, and a little bit of football and conditioning at the end. Um, and I also have sort of like a hybrid strength power session in the gym, lower body focused. On Tuesday, I'll have full lower body uh, strength. That's where I do my squats or my hang cleans and stuff like that. And I'm off pitch,
Yep.
so I'm off feet that day. Wednesday is normally a day off. Thursday, um, I'll go back on and do a skills session, change of direction, speed exposure, but no conditioning.
Yep.
And come back in and do a gym session. Friday is a core and hip conditioning sort of gym session,
Yep.
also off feet. And then Saturday will be my big day where I do sort of everything.
Yep.
It's a big volume day, big skills day. And on the days at the moment, we just started doing it this week. On the days where I'm off field, I'll do off feet conditioning. So whether it's an assault bike session, a metcon, or swimming.
Yep.
Whereas, previously I was doing it almost every day. Every day I had sort of off feet conditioning as well.
Yep. So that big Saturday is priming you for the expected return back. Game day is generally a Saturday.
Game day.
So that's the planning for that in the future.
Yeah. And we've normally got Sunday off, so they sort of give me a big hit that day, along with a strength based gym session.
Yep.
So I sort of get hit from both ends there, on pitch and off pitch.
And your golf game the next day is pretty ordinary, I would imagine.
Absolutely, hitting balls left and right, and actually, but it's good active recovery, so I guess I'll take it.
100%, mate. And it's like a bad day at golf's better than a good day at work, and
absolutely,
same as fishing as well, they say.
Absolutely.
Oh, mate, that's good. So, wait, I've gone over time, and I apologise for
that's okay.
keeping you up a little bit later
That's
than
all right.
expected. Last one, I think probably to give our physios listening here, what are the kind of I guess expectations and criteria now moving forward? I know you're only 5 months, and the physios and medical team may not have sort of spelled out clearly what you need to do to play your first game, but have you got any insight there as to what kind of levels of strength or psychological readiness, any kind of tests and any measures that you've already sort of been told about that you'll be asked to pass at this stage, or is it still just a week by week process?
I've actually completed most of the testing. I haven't done the surgeon testing yet, which I've got in a couple of weeks. So he's doing the 9-month testing for me at 6 months.
Awesome.
Which is the IKD and a series of other tests that he conducts.
Is he going to re-MRI?
No. So we actually MRI'd the other day,
Yep.
Just for that hamstring stuff.
Yep.
And obviously it was just a sort of a bit of tendinopathy in the hamstring.
Did he comment how your graft is looking?
The graft, he said the graft site's looking really good,
awesome.
Which is actually something I was interested in, because I've been asking the physios all along, is there a way, do we scan along the way and see, maturity of the graft? And it's sort of tough to see in a scan, isn't it? So,
well, I know without sort of putting words in anyone's mouth, but I know Julian, he has done that before. I have heard him, as part of the sort of return to play decision making. I think there was an athlete that was 7 or 8 months. So, technically a bit earlier than anticipated for everyone, but the way his graft had matured and surgically was looking pretty strong. So that may be something worth bringing up with him anyway. But
of course. I didn't. I've sort of, because for me, round one next season is 11 months.
Yep.
So, given the timeline and the sort of circumstance we're in, there's no real point to push, for 7 months, because 7 months is the start of preseason. So there's no games or anything to play for. And finals for us is, in 4 or 5 weeks, which will put me at about 6.5 months, which is obviously, for me, even, being someone who's raring to go and really wanting to push the boundaries, it's still a little bit early.
Yep.
And I wouldn't be in any sort of condition to be able to benefit the team anyway. So, we sort of just wrote off the season and waited till next season. So,
would it be different if this was going to be your last year?
Absolutely.
Yeah,
absolutely. I'd be trying to push all sorts of boundaries, just because, I'd say to myself that if it happens again, I'm probably going to retire anyway. So, at least I can take my time with that rehab if it happens again. Obviously, I never want it to happen, but
Yes.
to sort of push out any sort of time that I can.
Yeah.
Um, if it was my last season, yeah, I'd be pushing for 6 months, six and a half
Yeah.
months, because
Yeah.
I know in Europe and in South America, most of their players come back in 5 and 6 months, and
Yeah.
obviously the risk is extremely high, but
Yeah.
they do it, and a lot of them come out the other end
Yeah.
and they're fine. So
That's right. It's interesting. Like we are probably a bit more defensive minded in general, the physio and medical community. So we often quote, there's re-injury rates of in professional athletes, the graft failure rate's actually pretty low, like 5%, 3 to 5%
mhm,
professional athletes. Amateur, under 20-year-old kids, yeah, it's sky high, 30% in the first two
yeah,
years. But as scary as those 30% figures are, there's 70% of kids who go back to sport and aren't injured. And
yeah,
conversely, 95% of professional athletes go back to sport and don't injure their ACLs as well. So yeah, it is that risk versus reward, right? And like I'm sure the decision has been weighed up numerous times about, and obviously with professionalism, you've got to think about contracts, you got to think about families, you got to think about it's not it's not an easy decision. You got so many stakeholders pulling you one way, and then ultimately you're stuck in the middle with this really important decision
yeah,
to make. And yeah, like to be able to sort of have that maturity to go, you know what, I'm just going to ride this one out. There's no urgency to get back this year, and yeah, and I've got many more seasons left in me.
yeah,
Let's do the last few seasons right. I think that's definitely the right move.
yeah. Yeah, that was a big factor for me. And I've still got a year left on my contract after this season. So I thought to myself, why risk it for the sake of a game or two, and potentially risk all of next season as well,
Yeah,
where I can sort of get back to next season, be at my best again, and try and fight for another contract. So
yeah,
um, it it was sort of it wasn't even in my mind to be back for this season. I just knew that 6.5 months is just it's pushing even for me just a little bit too much.
yeah,
Even though Julian said, "Look, I'm comfortable for you to return at 7.
yeah.
9 would be ideal, but I'm comfortable for you to return at 7." And 7 months puts me in the middle of the off season, which
Yep.
doesn't make a difference for me. So
Yeah.
realistically, I'll be returning at 8.5 months into first day of preseason.
Yeah.
And
A
I've
pretty powerful place to be.
yeah,
You'll be, physically, like you haven't had those rigors as much as what your teammates have had, like the weekly grind of playing professional football and the
yeah,
travel and all those little bits that take away from you that require that, good 6 to 8 week off season before you roll into a next preseason. You've kind of weathered that and your body will come out better for it so that your preseason next year, you'll kind of get off to a flying start from day one.
absolutely.
Be physically and mentally a lot more fresher for the process. So
Yeah, for
yeah,
sure. And it's given me a little bit of time, a little bit more time to spend with my family.
yeah,
Obviously, I haven't had to travel, and played a lot of golf,
yep,
a lot of
very good.
golf, and I'm also studying. I'm studying sports science as well. So,
Oh, very good.
like I said before, it's sort of my injuries have sort of shaped uh, a path for me post football, and I sort of want to get into the rehab coaching side of things, just because I've spent most of
Yeah.
my time in rehab, unfortunately. So I've gained a lot of valuable experience along the way. So I figured, you know, to help others in the experiences that I've had would be a sort of natural path for me to take.
It's absolutely, mate. It sounds like you, and unfortunately, will be very, very good due to your personal experience
I'm glad I could be of assistance.
post football career. Very good, mate. It's been a pleasure to chat. I honestly appreciate
Likewise.
you come along tonight, Andrew, and giving us all your insights of what it's like dealing with an acute ACL injury and the personal struggles and the physical struggles. And it's been wonderful insight. And so hopefully everyone's taken a few little gems away from our chat tonight. So thanks for
I
your
appreciate
openness
it.
and humbleness, mate. Thank you.
No problem. I'm happy to check in again in a couple of months to give you guys an update if you
Mate,
want.
we'll get you back for an update. Sounds great.
Absolutely. My pleasure, guys. Thank you.
All right, Andrew. Thanks very
Thanks,
much,
Mick.
team. And just stay tuned for the next installment of live Q&As with the ACL Hub. We'll see you next time.